Gentleman yields. I'd like to recognize the gentle lady from Minnesota, Ms. Fishbach, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Representative Cismani, for the invitation down, and thank you to the Western Caucus, and thank you for the chair, because I think it is so important that we have these meetings and we are out and about and we are actually looking at the border, not just talking about it, and we know what's going on and we're talking to the people that it affects. And I also thank you for waiving me on the committee. I actually sit on Ways and Means, but we're doing the field hearings too, and I see such great value in them. So I really appreciate the community welcoming us and such hospitality. And I also really am pleased to see that you're all together on this. This is a huge issue for you, and you want to make sure that we are helping you and not hindering what's going on. So I appreciate you all being here. And actually, I have constituents here, if you can believe it, because they're just so excited to come down and see me. I'm just teasing. They're here for other reasons than to see me, but they're concerned about the border too. And that's one thing. Representative Stauber represents one half of the northern border in Minnesota. I represent the other half in Minnesota. And we're already, and I mentioned this to the sheriff earlier, we're already getting reports that we're having illegal crossings there. And so maybe very soon we're going to be seeing the same problems, unfortunately. And so we need to make sure that we are doing what we can to help you secure and do what you can so that we can do the same when we need to. But I think, there's been a lot of great questions, a lot of great comments. But and since I'm second to last, what I want to do is give everybody, I've got, 3 minutes. If you have anything that you wanted to say that you weren't offered the opportunity to here to just finish up, if there's a comment you want to make, kind of last chance, unless Representative Collins decides to turn over some time. And it looks like Mr. Del Cuello has something.
Yes, ma'am. Look, we understand that there's things that President Biden can do, but we know he's not going to do them. And that's why we need bills and laws to come through so we can actually hold them accountable and actually get things done. H.R. 2 happened to be the perfect bill. There's no attacking it. But we need to pass bills. We can't just say, hey, he can do this or he can do that, because we are aware of what he can do, but we're also aware of what he's not going to do. We need Congress to work together and get bills across so we can stop what's happening on our southern borders. It doesn't matter if you're right wing or left wing. The drug cartels do not care. They just want to come into the United States, harm American citizens, and if we continue just pointing a finger of one way or the other, we're never going to get anything done. Thank you.
Well, and Mr. Del Cuello, can I ask, are you engaged with both parties in Congress or whoever is on that? Because we need to know before it gets to the point. We need your engagement before it gets to that point.
Right.
That there's a bill, but the input on the policy. So I'd love to see you engaged with that as it's produced.
So the National Border Patrol Council is engaged with both sides. And we do have a good relationship, and we're able to talk to certain individuals, obviously, on either side. Obviously, we have better relationships with some than with others, but we are engaged with different sides to try to get the right things done. I also, aside from your question, I want to thank Congressman Ciscomani for putting this together and coming down here. I will add that he is one of the congressmen in Arizona that has continuously been engaged and continuously makes phone calls asking not just what's going on with the border, but also asking how the Border Patrol agents themselves are doing. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
And I appreciate making sure you're engaged and making those suggestions on policy, because that's what we need. And I believe someone else had another comment. There you go. I'm sorry.
I'm stunned that nobody's talked about securing the border at the border, finishing the wall.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that the United States government can't secure the border if it wants to. We need to complete the wall. We need to put the fiber optic communications in, the sensors in, the electricity, and put the military, if necessary, or the National Guard on the border. We need to secure the border at the border.
Thank you very much. And if there is anybody else want that last word? The sheriff. There you go.
As elected sheriff, you know I'm going to say something, but I will say this. I did a media interview a while back, and they asked me some of what you've all made. I appreciate the kind comments to all of us here on this panel, but Sheriff, why do you do what you do? Number one, we signed up for it, just like you all have. But they really hit that hard. You know, we've given up. We're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to do it anymore. And I made a comment. I want to share it with the people in the audience today and you all today is I was elected to promote this quality of life in the citizens of this county to include and enforce the rule of law. The day I give up hope is the day we're in a hell of a lot of trouble here in Cochise County. And we're never going to give up hope. We as leaders today have to stand united, state, local, and federal. If we can do that in this country, this problem will go away. So thank you for the opportunity to address that.
Well, and thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for the whole community, coming together to address this. But and we will, you heard. So many folks have been here numerous times, been to the border. I know that we have to address it, and I know that these folks, they continue to come down. And the fact that 12 or 13 of us showed up to come down here to see what's going on, we'll do our best. We'll do what we can, and we appreciate your support and help too. So thank you very much, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. I'd now like to recognize the other gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Y'all, as an old trucker from Georgia in his first term in Congress, I ran on several different things. The border issue was right up there as number one in securing that border. Mr. Chilton, you took the words right out of my mouth. That blame wall's work, and we need to finish that wall. When I've been up here just over a year, y'all, I've had the opportunity to go, I don't know, I think on this maybe my 7th, 8th field hearing. And most of the time we sit in D.C. and we hold these hearings and we haul these intellectuals in from Harvard and Yale, the ones that know everything. But that ain't where the real story's at. And it's nice to come out here to see real people and to look out there and see on your face the concern that you have, not just for you, but for your family and for your kids. I represent about 20 counties. And we've got a county it's barely 15,000 people, y'all. Man, they're losing more than one person a month to fentanyl. And this is up in North Georgia mountains with good blue-collar people. Sheriff, I sometimes I like to rant and don't ask questions, but I've got to know something because I'm like Representative Buddy Carter here. I did not know. I thought that when you wanted to cross the border, you shelled out, I don't know how these folks have $8,000 to $10,000. I thought they were poor and couldn't afford nothing. But I thought you just came down here, shelled out money, and you went across the border. But from what I understand, and I want you to elaborate just to tell the American people exactly how this works, because apparently there's certain sections of the border that you go across depending on who you are, what you are, and this thing is way more organized than just a ferry boat ride across the river.
Congressman, you're exactly right on that, and thanks to your sheriff from your district that came out and spent some time with us too, Sheriff Long. But it's true. It's the gatekeepers by the cartels that control the fees, control who comes across the country. As my friend here from Border Patrol will tell you too, it's $7,000 and up based on who you are, who's taking the money from you. So, and a lot of those people, Congressman, don't have the money, so they become servant. And that's where that word, the modern day slavery, and it's amazing we're allowing that to happen, that come to the country, they're servant to the cartels for labor, sex, enforcement, whatever the case may be. We have to address the cartels, not as a political body, but a criminal body. And then you've heard me talk about that earlier today too. So it's a tragedy what's going on with this cartels. And it's sad that we're down here, state, local, community leaders, doing everything we can, while the White House and members of Congress are turning their back on that criminal cartel because they're the ones winning here.
And I appreciate that. The criminals that are coming across, they don't respect our borders. They don't respect that trash or the firewood. They don't respect our law enforcement, our laws. I want to tell y'all something. The hearings I've been on, the federal government doesn't give a rat's butt what you think. It's complete overreach. It's complete out of control. It's dominance. It's dominance over the American people to push us far left into a socialistic society. And if they can import people like the people you've seen out there with these protests that don't have any respect for law enforcement, then they've got more voters in the country. The thing I think I want to get across today is, and I want two things to come across. Number one, by God, the political winds are changing in this country. Sir, you're exactly right. That border bill the Senate put out there, it was crap. I'm glad they didn't take it up. H.R. 2, been sitting over there in the Senate for almost a year, y'all. Hell, it's got enough dirt on it you could plant produce in it. But they're not going to take that up. Of course they're not. They're not going to take up anything. They're not going to do those 8 suggestions. I got them posted outside my wall. They're not going to do that. That'd interfere with their agenda. But I tell you what, November's coming quick. Biden had all 3 houses when he first came in. They wanted to really pass a border law. They could have done it then. What chamber were they missing? Nothing. We can fix that in November. We put the right people in place up there, and by God, we'll let these folks know that came in this country illegal, it's time to go home. Because if you don't want to go home, we're going to pick you up and we're going to send you home. Because, y'all, it's time to take our country back. Mr. Chairman, I yield back with that.
Gentleman yields. I'd now like to recognize Mr. Siscomani for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, well, again, I'm the last one, and I just want to thank, again, everyone here on the table for being here, for listening so attentively to the witnesses. That's what I do. This is where I get my information. So now you know where, you know, what. If you like what I'm saying up there, it's because I listen to the right people here. I'm not sure, though, if I totally appreciate Mr. Carter trying to encourage Mr. McCaw over there running for Congress. I mean, I just got here, so well, okay, well, we'll. But Mr. McCaw, thank you for what you do.
Thank
Mayor, I'll start with you real quick. I've got a few questions and only 5 minutes left, of course. But, you know, in terms of, we often hear about the partisanship on the border issues. And one thing that I talk about in Washington all the time, that it may be partisan in Washington, and it is. We've seen it. But I always say that at home, it's not. At home, we have mayors on both sides of the aisle, county supervisors on both sides of the aisle, constituents on both sides of the aisle that care about this. And I think by this panel, we have a clear example of that. But people in the audience, we have a clear example of that. Can you talk about that, how this issue is not a partisan issue here at home?
Yes, sir. Chairman Tiffany, Congressman Siscomani, the letter that we wrote to President Biden on January the 5th, it doesn't have Republican or Democrat on it. We have 7 mayors here in Cochise County that have gathered a coalition, Democrats, independents, as well as Republicans, to back our sheriff, to back our police, our chiefs, and our federal partners. We wrote a letter to him. Only person I heard from was Representative Siscomani. We carbon copied the Vice President, Mr. Mike Johnson, Senator Sinema, Senator Kelly, Representative Juan Siscomani, Governor Katie Hobbs, my dear sheriff. We always talk every day, but I haven't heard squeaky wheel from anyone else.
That's a shame.
We as mayors in this county are gathered together because we have an issue here. We have a problem, and we're going to back our sheriff and our police chiefs, and we're going to make sure that Washington hears our voices.
I love that. And if there's something that I want my colleagues to take away from this, is that example, that this is not a partisan issue at home. At the border, it's not. In Washington, where we fight every day, it is. But right here, it's not. I want to, Sheriff Daniels, real quick, you know, we met back in December, and we discussed the burden on the border crisis on the county attorney's office and the increase in crime rates here. Can you elaborate a little bit on what crime you see here, on how the county is dealing with it?
Well, first of all, Congressman, thank you. We're honored to have you serving us here. And I will say, in the short tenure you've been in Congress, you've been the most engaged U.S. congressman I've ever dealt with. So thank you so much for leading this and everything you're doing. We're honored to have you. I'll say it again.
Thank you.
Our biggest threat is the international draw to Cochise County by the cartels through social media coming down here. They're bringing their criminal baggage, their stolen cars, their warrants. Teenagers. We had a case out of Ohio where a fugitive came down here with a 17-year-old missing and exploited child from the state of Ohio. We see it all here, and the murders and the tragedies from our citizens and the death along our highways. We had a third grader walk into school and came across a migrant that came across the border illegally, died in the back seat of the smuggler's car. They rolled his body out along the highway, and here comes a third grader going to school. You name it, we see it, Congressman.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. We've got to do something different because we're changing lives every day in this country because we're not doing nothing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sheriff. And I've been on spending the night tour with you, and you know, you're still very active out there making stops yourself, and I appreciate that. Speaking of that, I'll go to Mr. De Cueto here. You know, you're on that same note on the agents, and today you're wearing a really nice suit and a tie, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But I every time I see you, though, you're working on the field. You've actually been injured on the job due to the attacks that you've received yourself. The same goes for the agents that work there that you represent so fervently every single day, and you speak on their behalf. And you and I have talked about this before. And my last question here will go to you. Can you talk a little bit about the morale of the agents right now and what they're facing, what's happening in terms of the turnover and what that means for the force as well?
So the morale is the lowest that I've ever seen it. I remember when I first started, I would see agents that would get near the point of retirement, and many of them would ask for extensions so they would stay. Many other agents would stay until it was time, for them mandatory to leave the job. Right now, you are getting so many agents that the first thing they do, as soon as they're eligible, they're leaving the job. They're just saying they cannot deal with it. A lot of it is because, they have an administration, they have leadership within the agency that has not backed them up. We've all talked about and we've seen what happened with the horse patrol and everything else. It is getting so difficult for agents to be out there and actually do their job and do it knowing that they're doing the right thing, but obviously always underneath the microscope, and we have an administration that just will not back them up for what they're doing. The morale is the lowest I have ever seen in my entire career.
Thank you for what you do, and thanks to everybody on the panel. With that, I yield.
The gentleman yields. Mr. LaMalfa, you asked for one more minute. I will give you one more minute.
It's just an action. I'll throw an action people can take. Mr. Del Cueto, I appreciate your passion on that. We passed legislation in D.C. to do these things. On September 29, under Speaker McCarthy, we had in a continuing resolution, tough border policy. And we got shot down by some of our own dummies on that one. But previously, last May, on May 11th, H.R. 2 passed the House on a partisan vote, 219 to 213, and it's sitting over in the Senate. So if people want something to do, call your United States senators from Arizona that profess to be moderate and ask them, where is H.R. 2? Why is that not moving in order to fix this? Okay? So one more thing you can do is call the White House and the 8 points that Mr. Stauber listed that the president could do without having to pass a bill through Congress or blame us or anything on that. He could do by executive action, and it wouldn't even be unconstitutional on those 8 points. He could take action. Folks, demand those actions, and we'll see some results. Thank you. God bless you.
Gentleman yields, and we're going to conclude this hearing, but first, the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee made a commitment at the start of this session to have hearings across the United States of America, and we have been fulfilling that commitment, including we went to Guam earlier, or in 2023. We have been having hearings across the United States of America, and I appreciate him keeping that commitment. And I would like to give the chairman of the full committee another little bit of time for brief closing remarks.
Well, thank you again, Chairman Tiffany, and thank you to everyone here today for the hospitality that you've shown to us, for the interest you have, to all of our panelists, and to all the members who took time from very, very busy schedules from all parts of the country to come here today. And the reason we're here is because this is important. This is extremely important. And I can tell you, when I became first ranking member of the Natural Resources Committee and then chairman of the committee, hearings on border security weren't what you would think the Natural Resources Committee would be addressing. But this problem infiltrates all of our country, from sea to shining sea, and Alaska and Hawaii, and our territories as well. And to illustrate that, I ended up in New York City, of all places, on National Park Service land in Brooklyn, where this administration waived every environmental law. They waived NEPA, they waived the Endangered Species Act, they waived the Historical Preservation Act in 1 week to build migrant shelters to process illegal migrants in New York City. So don't tell me that this doesn't affect every nook and cranny of our country. We all took an oath to uphold the Constitution. Our committee has full jurisdiction over federal lands. 35% of the southern border are federal lands, and things happen on those lands from the actions of illegal migrants that American citizens would be arrested for, would be fined or arrested for. That's not right. This sounds partisan. A lot of the things we say sounds partisan, but I want to try to be as nonpartisan as can be and just talk about the facts and the data. Since 2020, the number of illegal crossings has gone up exponentially. We saw it right here in the data that we learned today that in 2020, 60,000 people were being apprehended. It's 10 times that much today. The facts are, when President Biden came into office, he undid every policy that was there that was aimed at securing our border and opened up the border. Why he did that, I have no idea. I don't see who benefits from that. Mr. Del Guido, you made an excellent point. I don't think this president's going to do anything that he's not forced to do. And that's why we passed H.R. 2, because Congress wanted to force him to do the right thing. That's also why the Senate will not take it up and why he would never sign it into law. And it's also why anything that he would sign into law would not force him to do anything that he doesn't want to do. So we're going to continue fighting for you. We're going to continue fighting for our constituents across this country. And we're going to continue to make sure that Americans control Americans, not Mexican cartels and drug lords and despicable people that are controlling it right now. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman Westerman. And just a public service announcement. On Sunday down at the Chilton Ranch, you are welcome to join them. They're going to be installing more cameras. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And so you are welcome to join them down there as they install more cameras down on the ranch.
On live border news, Jonathan Alexander.
Okay, I'd like to thank all the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. Members of the committee may have some additional questions for our witnesses today, and we will ask that they respond to them in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit questions to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for your responses. If there is no further business, without objection, the Subcommittee on Federal Lands stands adjourned.